Well, there are calls for the President to sign into law the Domestic Workers' Compensation Bill. Previously, workers were excluded from claiming for injuries sustained while on duty. Well, back in 2020, the Constitutional Court ruled that a section of the Compensation Act was invalid. Let's talk about the current status of domestic workers with Mashiane, the President of the United Domestic Workers of South Africa organization. A very good afternoon to you, ma'am. Thank you for your time and your patience today. So the bill was only sent to President Ramaphosa for assent back in September. So it's been about 3 months since, but you feel that the process at his level is still taking much too long.
Good afternoon and thank you for having me. Yes, it's 2 years now since the court ordered the minister to include domestic workers in COIDA. It took some months in Parliament. Now the president is also keeping it. I was asking on Wednesday that why is he not signing the bill? Because really it's long overdue. And there's a lot that needs to be done about COIDA, both domestic workers and the employers, in educating and informing them, because there are many domestic workers who don't know about this. So we need the president's signature so that we are sure. We know we are assured because the Compensation Fund Commissioner gazetted in March 2021. We know that we are covered by COIDA. That's an assurance, but we want that insurance signature from the president.
And let's go back a few steps and speak about how it is that before that landmark ruling back in 2020 by the Constitutional Court, domestic workers were basically given the worst employment deal in this country, because if they were injured at work, they were not entitled to any compensation, which in any other situation or any other setting work-wise would be protected or guaranteed by law.
That's true. That's why when I read about the case of Mashiane in Pretoria News in 2012, I stood up and take on this case because domestic workers were neglected, were violated, were exploited in any way. As we speak, we have domestic workers. I have heard of 2 cases of domestic workers in Mpumalanga who their employers are implicated in their deaths. According to what I've heard, they were killed by their employers. And nobody says anything. Nobody stood up and said, what's happening here? I mean, nobody from the government. If something happens to domestic workers, it's just something like they're taking us so light. That's why you are saying the COIDA amendment bill must be signed into law.
Do you think that...
Because always we are the last.
Apologies for interrupting you, ma'am. I want to ask you about the culture of silence in the domestic workspace, right? Because many domestic workers, firstly, don't have contracts, employment contracts, and they rely on a verbal agreement with their employers. We know that employers have been resistant even in paying minimum wages to their helpers. Now that we're now trying to make sure that there's a liability on the side of employers when a worker is injured in the home, in the workplace, do you think that that culture of silence is what's going to prevent the successful implementation of this law once it happens?
Yes, there will be cases of domestic workers who will fear to report their injuries to their employers because fearing that they might be dismissed. And there will be domestic workers who will be injured at work and the employers will advise them otherwise. Like I said to somebody, that others are going to be taken to their employers' doctors who will write the report to please the employers, not the accurate report for domestic workers to claim and benefit from compensation fund. As I'm saying that there are many challenges with this COIDA. We need to go all around the country as the unions, as government, as other organizations who are working together with domestic workers to educate domestic workers and make sure that it works for domestic workers, but it needs all stakeholders on board. Are
you happy with the bill in its current state as far as the lengths to which it goes to protect domestic workers?
Yes, I am happy with it, but it's not signed. The Constitutional Court ordered the minister with immediate effect. It's 2 years down the line now. Domestic workers are always taking time to get their benefits. We are the last people to be thought of. That's what you are saying, that it must be signed. We want to point out that this section of COIDA, not section of COIDA amendment bill, we want to say COIDA in full.
And you feel that domestic workers and their plight are not taken seriously. This bill has been on the President's desk since September. No action yet. What happens if in the next 3 months, which will make it 6 months, or another 6 months, which would take it to a year, this bill is still not signed? What would you say would need to happen at that point in order to put more pressure to get these protections for domestic workers?
This is a landmark case. We'll go back to media and we'll visit the President there, the union buildings. We'll mobilize domestic workers to go and to voice our unhappiness with the President, because that's how our government here. We have to take an action, and we know that we are undermined as domestic workers, because even if when we take actions, they don't come to receive our memorandums. But we will not be silent. We will continue until it's right.
Ms. Mashiane, I'm sure the President is probably going through the various news channels, possibly even watching Newzroom Afrika, when you consider how much of his own life and employment status is being discussed at the moment, especially on platforms such as ours. If you could address him directly today, what would you say?
I will plead with the President, the Honorable.
Okay, that was the worst part for that feed to freeze in that way. Apologies.
Please take up that.
I think we've got Pinky Mashiane back. We lost you because our feed froze, ma'am. You were saying you would plead with the President to
sign quite an amendment bill so that even the employers can take domestic workers serious. Let it start from the government and then the employers will follow.
Thank you very much for that, Pinky Mashiane, for speaking to us today.